Yeah, exactly.
We've all been clear about it.
Yeah. So one of the things that occurred to me when I was speaking to you a couple of days ago was that we don't get to hear a lot from countries outside of, I don't know, the big sort of 3 or 4 countries that dominate the news. So people like the US or the UK, or currently there's been a bit of focus on Brazil, and there's the ongoing focus on China. But almost every single country in the world has been affected by COVID. And it was really surprising, I think when we met, that I learned about the fact that you're a doctor, that you work, in a hospital in Yemen. And, during the course of our friendship, I've seen you, go through the initial sort of, stages of dealing with the crisis in your country, and, yourself as a doctor, in the medical sort of profession there. And then I think more recently, you even, you got COVID yourself. So it struck me that, it might be like a really good conversation to have, and to try
I
and
think it would.
understand like how it's been for you. I mean, for those that don't know, Ozzy and I don't know. Dude, why don't you tell them how we met? Like, while I get myself a glass of water.
Well, in the first time that we've met, it was quite, huge for me to go into Discord, and it was like my first time that I've actually made this move, trying something social again for about 3 years since I've been using Facebook. And for me, it was kind of a new step, and it was, fruitful, as I hope. And the first thing that came into my mind, was I want to try and search some groups or some servers, some hosts, and I came upon this server called coronavirus COVID-19 server, which is was on the first page when you try to search anything, and it has like a pin down through Discord moderation. And when I joined, it was kind of, new, because I haven't tried a lot of these kind of stuff, especially the online, idea was kind of new to me. And the first VC that I've went through was called, I don't know, like Topic VC, on Topic VC, I think, yeah. And when I first came in, I found some wonderful people in there, such as Joad himself, and it was very, new to me and all. And first when I met, I was like, where are you from? And people were asking me, where are you from now? I was like, yeah, I'm actually from Yemen. And they were like, how is Yemen? And at the time, COVID wasn't, a relative in Yemen. It was like something on the news. There weren't any cases in Yemen at the time. And
that was back in February, right? Or March?
Yeah, that was about in February. Yeah, true. And when I came upon that server, I mean, like, the first thing that I saw is some, people that are talking about, Brazil, Italy, and I've tried, like, this might be helpful. I was like, this is, could be helpful for me, and I might actually get something out of it. And I did, actually. I've met great people and, get to know their story. I've also, encountered some of the, false ideas that we used to have mutual in Yemen too, by the way. And that made me think that this might be the right place for me to actually, get benefit from, and, also help people that are in the same situation as I am. And at the time, I wasn't, I wasn't that much, knowing. I didn't know a lot about COVID-19 as I am right now. And for me, it did really gave me that launch that I've been looking for a while. And I met Jawad there and a couple of guys that were very, very, very awesome. And I'm very, I appreciate that I've actually met them. They really were, good to talk with good pals, to share some information about yourself. And they made it feel like a home for me, to be honest. Because at the time I was alone, I wasn't with my family. It kind of was like something you could actually have in a cafe or something, like a conversation in a cafe. And for me at the time, working in Yemen, I was at my latest, exams of my senior residency, and now I'm done. By the way, that's the case. And to be honest, when we first heard anything about Corona, it was like something casual that you would hear on the news. It was something like, some cat died in a bath. It was something casual.
Ozzy, what is it with you and cats, man? Almost all our stories are about some terrible thing happening in some corner. Come on, dude. Let's keep it light here,
Okay. Now the cat's off. It was something like very casual. Like we can hear stuff on the news that are unnecessary. But for a while, we kept feeling the heat of what's coming, and for me, it was, a bit alerting.
I want to take a moment here and just tell people a little bit about the context of this, because so for a lot of people, and I know this is true as much in Europe as it is in America or elsewhere, they can't point to Yemen on the map. They know it's somewhere in what they know of as the Middle East.
The Arab Peninsula,
Yeah. So if you imagine, if you know where Saudi Arabia is, where Mecca is for Muslims, just to the south and I believe to the east of it is Yemen. Is that right?
Exactly, because if you go to the west, that's Oman.
Yeah, and so most people think of Saudi Arabia as being that entire peninsula. It's not, You have Oman there, you also have Yemen there. And Yemen, the capital city of it, which I learned actually from you, is Aden. Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, it's, by the way, as a note, it wasn't Aden before the crisis had started, because it used to be Sana'a, which is not for now. Aden's more of a temporary capital, and it's been like that for about 5 years.
I know from our conversations that Yemen was very, very peaceful and a lovely country, and it had a bright moment around, say, 2010, when there was a lot of optimism. But from our conversations, you've also told me that the security situation seems to have deteriorated. You mentioned that the capital shifted from Sana'a to Aden, and I think you also mentioned that investment in infrastructure had gone down because it was effectively a war zone. So, it shocks me to say this, but it sounds like you guys have been dealing with a civil war while you're also now having to face a global pandemic. Is that a fair characterization, do you think?
I think it was, unexpected for us to actually face both of them in this short duration. The war was, you can say, enough, and the pandemic was just, a pile of upon a pile, and for a quite handful of time, and before the pandemic has started, it was easy. You can easily say that it was kind of like going well until like Corona started, and the country started to go through a much more profound or deep recession, you can say. And for that was devastating, physically and mentally for a lot of people, because it wasn't easy to to play in
No,
the story that way. And the first news that we heard from Corona was that it started in China, and people used to make jokes about it, how China makes everything not really it's not true, and how this is this is just a conspiracy or anything. And it wasn't very it was vague. You can say it's vague. It was vague. And since it's been evidently there in about one of the 5 big countries like UK, Russia, and the US, it was very people were very sure that it's there. And for us Yemenis, we weren't in the picture yet with Corona, and it was more like the religious thoughts too kept coming. Like they thought, like, since we are still religious type, we're not going to get this kind of stuff, because at the time Saudi Arabia, Yemen, every Arab country hasn't got it yet. The first cases that went through Saudi Arabia, they were like, well, we're just confined to what we are in here, we're safe, because we don't have any transportation in and out the country. We don't have a lot of connections. We don't have ways, easy ways for us to go out and into the country. And for us, that was kind of a relief at the time. But it wasn't enough for us to stay on the lookout for this kind of disease that's not just a fun thing or a conspiracy.
So do you remember like the first moment when you heard the word COVID or coronavirus?
The first time that I heard COVID-19 was on the news, actually. And I heard also that the scientist that actually gave out the report of the first case was killed too. And I was, I was like, this is like some hubris, reporter that's trying to say stuff just to fill in. And I wasn't very sure about what's gonna happen next, or I was like, this is very normal. But for some reason, when I went to work that day, I heard a lot of my colleagues talking about this kind of stuff. So I was like, this might be something, something really, dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, so I took it upon myself to actually, read about it, because for us, COVID-19 wasn't, known before. It's something new. But we know some stuff about it from 2003, which is the SARS, as it used to be. We do know a little bit about it in biochemistry, like about, I don't know, 8 years from now, and it was something to, I had like a small idea about it. It's not like that big of a deal, and I didn't think that it would actually spread this much and cause this much,
Yeah, I had a very different
stress.
I mean, I had a very different introduction to it. I was working with a bank in London at the time, and I just finished a contract. And I was looking around for other contracts, and one of the most active places that I was considering going to was China. And I was speaking to my colleagues there and my friends, from the industry, and they were actually on edge. They were panicking. This was back in October. And I at first I thought it was just kind of nonsense, I was like, okay, they're just being a bit on edge and stuff, but China's not really the place to go. But they were telling me that they had shut down a city, or that they were starting to, move police and army and stuff in there.
Yeah, Wuhan.
Yeah, in Wuhan, exactly. And I just thought, okay, fine. But it was like several different people from different regions of China who were telling me this exact same story, and that's unusual and typically unprecedented. And they also mentioned that there was a virus or something that had been, released, and that it was like the flu, but, it was actually killing people, and that the Chinese government was taking it ultra seriously. And I was like, okay. So I thought, all right, you know what? I'll wait a week and see, if it just blows over in the news cycle. And it didn't. A week later, they were saying the same thing, but actually much more serious. And at that point, I did the mathematics of it, and I realized, okay, this is probably a flu-like illness that they're having trouble controlling. And China is one of the most modern states in the world. And it's also an authoritarian regime, right? And
it's amazing too how they actually gone through those stages of lockdown, and I'm amazed at how it actually works.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean, they have 1 billion plus in population, and they take direct action. Like, they don't have to worry about a lot of the steps that other people do, and that can be a bad thing, and sometimes it can be a good thing. And in this case, I don't know. I think the jury's still out, but the fact that they were that worried about it made me realize that, okay, it will probably not be contained. It will spread through China, and I know that China is the world's manufacturing base, right? And it's basically a business hub for the world. So I knew that when they were talking about it, that it probably had left China already, and that other countries probably weren't prepared for it, right? And this was
in the beginning when COVID-19 actually hit. I thought like, this is something, casual that would just go on go off after a while. But when I looked at how China actually reacted to this kind of disease, I was more, kind of, keep my eyes peeled for this kind of stuff, because to be honest, building a hospital in 10 days wasn't something normal a country would do unless it's so urgent. And for that, I was like, if this really is an outbreak, and I think it would be an outbreak, because I mean there are like a lot of people coming back from China and leaving China. But when I heard like Yemen, the Yemeni embassy did not involve, didn't take the those investors and students that used to be in China and take them back. I was kind of a relief, It was kind of a relief that I heard that, and I came to my, to my usual day. I went to my usual day, and it was like all right again. And for a while it was like that until it actually hit Oman and Saudi Arabia. At the time I said like, well, there are the closest countries to us, and there is like an easy transportation line between us and them. There are a lot of people going to Saudi Arabia, and there are a lot of people coming back. That was like an alert.
So, I mean, what was the impression from the rest of your colleagues when you heard that it had reached Saudi Arabia?
Like for when it actually went to Saudi Arabia, they were like, if there is an outbreak here in Yemen, it would be devastating. It will end a lot of what's happening in Yemen.
Okay, and
I mean,
so
such as infrastructure, healthcare would go down, the everything would go down. We would go through a hell of a recession, and it kind of did for a while, but we kind of recovered a little bit from it right
So,
now.
I mean,
Even though the dollar
yeah,
is about 760 now, but you know, equivalent to what we have faced. This is like an assuring number.
yeah. So, I mean, when I first met you, you actually sounded very British to me. It sounds like you were at least educated or spent a bit of time in the UK and then came back to Yemen. So I think you may have experience of, say, the NHS as well as the Yemeni health system. Is that right?
Well, the NHS is no, it's quite different than the Yemeni the Yemeni health ministry. I mean, for us here, we only care about the numbers and the statistics. NHS gives more credit to the public opinion. We don't have that in here. Yeah, we did. I did hear a little bit of the NHS, kind of, kind of how people don't actually like it, and for a number of time when I was in the UK in Eastbourne, it was kind of chilly there, to be honest.
It's always chilly in Eastbourne, man.
It's always there. It's like a place where we can actually, just sit back and relax and just do nothing. It's like when you end.
Did you study there? Like, were you trained as a doctor in the UK, or were you trained as a doctor in Yemen?
No, I actually trained in Yemen and studied in Yemen, but I only studied English in Eastbourne, and I kind of lived for quite some time there, until about my first year of medical. Of my medicine career, medical career,
wow.
And I went back to Yemen to pursue that.
That, of course,
came in handy.
So when you came back to Yemen, you were inside the medical system there, and I mean, I know you're a very highly trained doctor. You deal with advanced trauma and things of that sort, right?
Yeah, trauma and resuscitation.
So, what's your current position? What do you do as a doctor? Just so that our listeners have an idea of where you're positioned in the health system.
Well, it's normal that I'm just a shift. For a while I was just training. Now I take shifts in the ER, and I spend most of the time in the resuscitation room, which is the place where you can say it's like the front line of every trauma case that we take in. It's not that complicated. It's like a normal doctor, a normal physician, but more of handy. We keep like working days and nights, trying to.
That sounds really interesting, actually. So
yeah, it is, by the way.
Oh, sorry about that. So I wanted to ask, what was your first encounter with COVID in your capacity as a doctor?
Well, when the first case came in, I wasn't actually in Aden. I was in another country, in another city, sorry. and I was like with my family. I was on actually. I was off work that day. I actually was like, something. I'm gonna just go into the server that's the coronavirus, and I kind of learned a little bit about it. I kind of read off some topics, articles, medical articles in from my colleagues and from the Ministry of Health itself, that it has actually sent us. They actually sent us a couple of things to know, and they actually
Did they
wanted
prepare you well?
to give. How so?
Did they prepare you well, in your mind?
Yeah. It's not like in the in a mindful kind of train only. Sorry, I mean they also gave us some like field training in what concerns COVID-19 too. They provided us with a respiratory therapist, and they really gave us like the instruments that we do actually need to face corona. And at the first days, it was more of a confined, kind of situation, because it was only confined to a couple of hospitals before. After the outbreak, it was still confined to those two hospitals, but the other hospitals became moreover like a forward kind of hospital. Like they keep forwarding patients who turn COVID positive to those two hospitals. It was more like a quarantine.
So essentially, you had COVID patients arrive at places across the country, and then they would be triaged,
but they
and then
forward them.
They would forward them across
to these two hospitals.
And did they forward all the COVID patients, or did they do a triage? Where they said, okay, you people are not so serious, we can deal with you locally, or we're only going to pass the more serious cases across. What was the process like?
Yeah, that was the point at the first time. They wanted to have like a hotline for the patients to actually call before coming in, and that didn't work, obviously, because people are when they have it, they all like no, I don't have it, I must have like some other issue, I must have had like food poisoning or something. This could be something that they have put in the water. They thought it was some sort of plague. Some even thought it was a pulmonary plague, and that's some old stuff. Something that most of the people have forgotten for about ages ago. I mean, like, how could this be possible?
Yeah.
And for them, they're like, no, the symptoms don't actually match the symptoms that we're actually been told in the news. And that made it harder and much more difficult for care providers to actually do their work well. It made it, even harder for them to actually help them, to help those who are actually in need. I mean, for a guy who would actually suffer from difficulty of breathing, he would only want to get relief. He's not going to go through theories or stuff too. And for us to do our work, it was a bit difficult at the time.
When you say difficult, do you mean it was difficult to get to see the right patients? I mean, in what way was it difficult? Did you not have the right equipment? Was it difficult?
It was harder because, the numbers were going high and high by the day. And,
so what were the numbers like, actually? That's a good point. I mean, how many people a day did you, see, having cases and
You know,
dying.
last Ramadan, and the last Ramadan of this year, it was which is I don't know, about 2 months ago.
Yes, 2 months ago.
3 months ago. Yeah, 2 months. 2 months ago. It was more like every day was a crisis. Like every day you can see like 100 patients dying.
Oh,
And that was a huge number. Not per day. I mean, like every day you can hear a lot of people dying and dying all over the city, and that was, terrifying. Even myself, I was like, this is not the normal COVID-19. I think they might be right. This could be the plague, and for a while,
what caused them to
I could
die?
think.
Because I think for a lot of people, like they go to the hospital.
Aden is one of the humid, hot cities in the Middle East. You can say it's one of the and the electricity too here is like, it's mind blowing. It's like 2 hours on and the rest is off. And at the time, for 5 days, it was for a continuous amount. For days, it used to be off, and that was
Very challenging.
it was actually very challenging. And for us, it was even for us who used to be COVID negative for a time. And it was very devastating for us. How about those who actually have hypothermia, which they must, provide them with the utmost, good sphere kind of ambient around them. That was impossible at the time. And, with electricity off, with that amount of heat going above, 45 degree. That was challenging, and one of the issues that we do also have here in Yemen is that every Yemeni is a pharmacist. Every Yemeni here thinks he's a pharmacist. He will go to any pharmacy and prescribe used to take this kind of drug before. My father used to take this drug before. I'm going to get this stuff, and I'm going to be great. And that's what kind of actually happened. And at the time, we used to have various, epidemics along with Corona. We used to have cholera. We used to have, chickungunya. We used to have malaria. Like various amounts of epidemics. Along with this pandemic, it was just pile upon a pile again, and it was hard to control. So even the symptoms of malaria and chikungunya was a bit similar to COVID-19.
Let's take a step back for a moment. I'm going to try and. Because there's a lot of information there that you've given me. So essentially, you're saying that the coronavirus arrived in the Arabian Peninsula. You guys were deeply worried about it. Then the government tried its best to help you to get ramped up to deal with it. And then the cases started arriving, and then they arrived en masse to the point where you had hundreds of people dying a day, which was unexpected. And the population was used to, it doesn't sound like that, the population was shocked or surprised by there being illness, in the country, because, they thought that the symptoms were similar to something else, which was, I think you mentioned it as a plague. And there were also other things as well in play at the same time. So you weren't just dealing with the it sounds awful, to be honest, but it sounds like you had the civil war burning in the background. You had,
the civil war was kind of on a postpone
well, it's a good
for a
idea to
while
yeah,
there.
I think that's probably one benefit of coronavirus, if
Yeah,
you want to call
exactly.
it
It
that.
was one of the benefits that we had from coronavirus,
But
which is like this whole issue kind of took a
a
step back
backseat,
for a
yeah.
while. Then it came back again
So you
on a
had,
different
as,
phase.
yeah, so as well as corona, you were also dealing with cholera, chickungunya, and a number of other actual epidemics,
Yeah,
as well as this stuff. And not just
true.
that, but it was in the height of summer in a very, very, very hot country. And, you're trying to deal with all these patients while at the same time your power was going off every 2 hours, and sometimes it was off for 2 days. There was no guarantee. And you had, the population effectively trying to self-medicate at the same time. It sounds like a very challenging situation, right?
Exactly. As we know from COVID-19, there are some stuff that the WHO had warned us not to take if you suspect that you do have corona.
Yeah.
One of the stuff is ibuprofen, for instance, and that at the time, was known. And if they kept that in mind for a while too, it would have been different. But it was really different. They were like, if this is, they didn't take into consideration the other diseases, which is like chickungunya. There are various amounts of medications that would actually make a complication over, over itself. Like some, let's call antibiotics that we try as much to prevent patients with chikungunya to actually take any kind of antibiotics. But unfortunately, they go to any pharmacy and they ask for antibiotics, random types of antibiotics, and they take them in. And for that,
That seems surprising to me. That
it
seems
actually does make complications that would actually end in a fatality. So we do get some.
sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but that, like, from the UK and I think from the US and other places, things like antibiotics, generally you can't get them from a pharmacy when you ask for them. Is it different in Yemen, where you can get pretty much any drug that you want from a
Yeah,
pharmacy?
exactly. Actually, if there is even a 14 years old who'd go to a pharmacy and ask for an antibiotic, that's like the easiest thing. Anyone can get one of those. Even the addictive drugs can easily be taken from a pharmacy.
And Guy,
Moreover,
anyone listening? Sorry.
child.
Just a second. For anyone listening, that is not an advertisement to go to Yemen and order addictive drugs from a pharmacy. We just want to make that a disclaimer. Ozzy is a doctor. He knows what to prescribe and what not to prescribe. The message of this podcast is essentially listen to your doctor and don't go and self-medicate. If that's all
Yeah,
right.
this is like something really devastating, and it's not like fun thing to talk about. It's not really fun, but
No.
I mean, like as I was actually trying to say, like it's not very,
Easy.
there is no, it's not easy to control.
No. So, okay. So you had that initial wave, and you had the health system trying its best to cope, and obviously it was a very challenging situation. How long did that last? Was it 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks?
A month and a half, maybe.
Wow. And during that time, I mean, I know from my conversations with people in New York and London and other places, they said that it was like nothing they'd ever seen, that you had so much death and so much, like, turnover, if you want to put it that way, of like patients coming in and out, that it was like nothing else they'd ever seen in their entire career. Was that the same for you?
To be honest, there is from my personal prospect, as a collective prospect of Yemenis, as I've heard from a couple of patients that I had.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like a lot of them, said that they used to have, after the fatalities that had happened along a few days of Ramadan. I mean, everyone at the time experienced something, kind of mysterious, because it was everyone you can possibly see didn't have the taste or smell
Wow.
at the time. It was very. It shows you how much it actually spread.
So yeah, there. I mean, okay. During that time, was there, for example, things like social distancing? Did people wear masks or any of that other stuff? What were the measures?
Yeah, to be honest, when the fatalities started to rise, everyone, everyone tried to stay home and keep as much distance from the religious gathering, social gathering, such as malls and schools. They obviously shut down the schools a while before, but the malls were still open until the fatalities started to rise, and it was close to the Eid, which is a very custom day for them, and it was very festive, and it was very normal and casual for people to go out and buy clothes and food for themselves. And after that, kind of like everyone that I've met told me that one or about 5 members out of 10, if we're trying to make it as an average, kind of experience the loss of smell, taste, and that was kind of vague for me, because that's like a huge number to say. I mean, like, until this was all at the time when Aden was considered to be a place of epidemic. It was stated publicly that it's in no way to allow someone to leave or come in to Aden, and it was very devastating for a lot of people. And even people started to go on, stealing. The stealing started to grow.
So you had looting
rates.
and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
People would start to, go through panic at the time. But alhamdulillah, people, kind of regressed from doing what they actually used to do. And that was a relief.
Yeah.
How it actually regressed, and
so after about a
how
month,
the recovery rate started to go up
yeah,
fast. And
so I mean, okay, so there was obviously, like, that was a very difficult period for you guys, and then it started to improve. The recovery rate started to go up. I think the number of cases started to probably decline. Right? That was after about 6 weeks.
About 6 weeks after, you mean?
Yeah.
After about 6 weeks, the country had already started to, feel the effect of corona. What's the damage that it has actually left? But at the same time, it was a very spacious field for the politicians to do their work without them being asked of what they're actually doing. There is no media. There is nothing. There are no riots going out. No one to talk about what's happening, and adds upon the electricity going off, the water supply was depleted from every single individual for about 5 days.
That's horrible.
And
so no water, no electricity.
Yeah, no electricity, no water now. And for a while, it was like a ghost town. Everyone started leaving from Aden, going to other cities, and it was more like a place that has no life in it, no more.
And how is it now? Has it recovered a bit from that?
Now the electricity problem is still a problem. Water is a bit going in and out. Some days it's on, some days it's off, and even the amount that a Yemeni with an average use of about 20 liters per day. That's very low for a normal person. I mean, and I think it would even go lower than that now. And
so
I mean, I don't know if it's gonna get better or not, because we're still going through this recession right now. And I don't think it's gonna get any better soon.
Okay, so it sounds like the country went through a massively bad, horrible situation because of coronavirus,
Sure.
And then it's only partially recovered at the moment. You were actively working through that time. I know, obviously, from our conversations. And,
Sure. Yeah.
I was actually shocked and really worried for you when you mentioned a few weeks ago that you actually had contracted coronavirus yourself. And you seem to be more worried that you weren't able to taste the sandwiches and stuff that you made.
Yeah, it was very, weird. At the beginning, I was like, "What's this stuff? Do I have corona? Do I not?" And I was even sure. I was like, "This is not the thing that I've actually expected," because a lot of my colleagues did actually have the same thing, which is, it used to be, a bit, scary, because I thought I was like, I heard a lot of my patients say, this has been going for me for about 5 weeks, sometimes say about 7 weeks, and I was, worried about whether I would get my taste back or not. I thought it varies from a person to another, and I'm one of those persons who would never get to smell or taste again. It was a bit scary.
Yeah, I mean, that's terrifying. Yeah. We don't often. I mean, when you talk about it just to another person, it's like, oh, taste and smell. You'll survive. You'll be fine. But it's the difference between enjoying your food through your life and, for example, just everything tasting. I think you called it, and I know other people have said as well, everything tastes like
dirt. It's like
dirt and cigarettes, right?
Dirt. And it smells like cigarettes.
Which is not, I mean, okay, if you love cigarettes, maybe, but not everything should be like that all the time, right?
No, it's like distinctive cigarettes, but I'm not like a smoker.
No, of course not. But one of the other things is that, you need your sense of taste and your sense of smell for survival. Like, if you have milk in the fridge, how do you check if it's off or not? Well, you smell it, right? So you don't pour it into your milk, eat it, and then become ill, right? You need to know that.
Sure it is, yeah.
I mean, little things like that you just forget about, but then you think to yourself, well, if I'm standing around right outside, and
it kind of remind me of the series I, Zombie, if you had seen it.
I have
for.
not. Ozzy,
It's
educate
like
me, bro. Educate me.
for those who actually seen it, they would actually know that zombies in that series didn't actually taste or smell anything. I was like, I might be one of those now. Kind of really want to rewatch that series again and see how they work things out.
And so, how did you discover that you had it? Was it just like that initial sense of not feeling well? What were the symptoms for
That
you?
that was the first incentive for me, and afterwards I kind of like took a test. I asked the manager if I can actually have a test for it. They agreed upon just the staff and those who are around us, even though we knew that we did actually have it, but we wanted the test just to be sure.
Yeah.
It came positive.
And how did you feel when you saw it come back positive?
I wasn't really surprised because everything was, green as grass.
Was there any anxiety? Was there any fear? Was there just, okay, yeah, no, that's fine? I mean, what did you feel like?
If I was, if I'm going to my family at the time, I would be worried. But I was, on a long shift there, so I was kind of like, it's gonna be all right. I mean, I'm not afraid. I have. If this is the symptoms, there aren't any symptoms that come later. That's for sure. And
did you have any
I kind of
trouble
was
breathing?
all right with it.
Yeah.
No, actually, I had a little bit of fever though for about 2 days, and it was like the most awful thing above all. It was like continuous 2 days of hyperthermia, and it went over 100.4 Fahrenheit, and for me that was like the clear sign that I've contracted coronavirus, because I was very try to keep it like away from mosquitoes, because it's very I would say malaria is not as COVID-19 is not as easy as malaria and chickungunya. They are really scary, to be honest.
Yeah. So
they carry a huge fatality rate.
So how did your family take the news when you told them that you had coronavirus?
They were like, "Oh, just deal with it. You're like everyone else in there." And I was like,
"You'll
sure,
be fine.
okay.
Just walk it off. It might have killed 150,000 Americans, but that's just America. You'll be fine."
Yeah, true.
Oh my goodness me!
By the way, as the WHO has stated that we have about 1,800 confirmed case of coronavirus, and still going, and the fatality is about 600. I don't know if that's right.
600 a month or 600 a day?
600. No. Totally, I'm saying about totally.
That's not too bad. How many people are in Yemen?
Stated, and that's the ones that have been admitted to the hospitals.
Okay.
Yeah, but for the rate of mortality, that by another way to say it, those who were at home, that's you could say that's a big number. That's a bigger number than.
Would you say that most of the cases weren't actually recorded?
Most of the cases weren't actually admitted to the hospital.
Wow.
Yeah, I could say that.
And does that mean that a lot of those people, okay, so before we go to that, I wanted to just talk a bit more about yourself. Did you get any treatment for your coronavirus or not?
Look, at the beginning, when Corona actually hasn't been in Yemen, and me and my colleagues were like, look, I'm not gonna be here if there is an outbreak. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I'm not gonna be here because, if there is an outbreak, I know that each one of you won't be in here, and I'm not very confident that you would, because at the time I would not see anyone to help me at the hospital. I'm very sure that no one would actually come for help. And,
Wow.
It really wasn't. We were at that kind of, level of, terrified of what's gonna happen, and it was very, well stated in the news that most of the, most of the doctors won't be attending if no one will take the virus seriously, because everyone was like, yeah, it's gonna be fine, it's gonna hit us, but we are a very strong. We've survived the war for about 20 years of continuous wars. We're gonna survive this virus. It's something normal. And I was like, guys, it doesn't really seem like normal. And if that's the case, I'm in with those kind of doctors who would actually leave their jobs just for their safety and for their family's safety. And they really stated that in the news by name, not just something that was someone like, okay, I'm not just going for work. No, they really stated that in the news.
So,
and
I mean, in the
many hospitals too.
Yeah, so I mean, in the hospitals themselves, I mean, you mentioned that this went on for a long time. Do you have any stories of patients and their journeys through it? Like, I want to just ask a couple of questions. The first is, I heard from New York and from London and other places that if you have moderate to severe symptoms of coronavirus, and I'm not saying that your symptoms weren't, serious, but let's say you have like serious trouble breathing, etc. You literally can't move, and you end up, say, on a ventilator. Like, your chances of survival are not that great. Was that the impression that you got?
It was the same thing. It was the same thing as here. I mean, about 85% of the patients who went through, severe triage, I mean, they were all dead, and the rest of them survived, and that's a huge number, to actually add on, and it was very devastating. I mean, the amount of people dying, per day was not something easy to handle.
And did it take a psychological toll on you or the people around you? Like, I mean, seeing that number of people die every day.
I mean, I considered even leaving for the first days. I mean, like, I was like, honestly, if this thing escalates even more, I'm just gonna leave. But for a couple of colleagues were like, no, if we weren't here, who's gonna be here? And that gave me, a little bit of courage to continue on doing what I'm doing, and that itself made a difference, I hope.
And I mean, you obviously got COVID afterwards, and alhamdulillah, you seem to be recovering.
It was very, it truly is. It was not as I've expected. And to be honest, I want everyone to know that the more, scared you are from this kind of, issue, the less it would be for you to actually go through it. Because you don't need to be afraid of something that if it does actually happen to you, if you do actually contract coronavirus, that's it. It's fated for you to take to have it. I mean, like, it's there. But if you don't have it, and you're well sanitized. You do wear a mask. You're always keeping a safe distance from others at work. If you're actually working, and if you're taking the safety, if you're taking every step like safely and stuff, like you're gonna be fine. It's nothing to worry about. I mean, some people with some elderlies and some people who are diabetic and those who actually have cardiac problems. I must assure them too that it's not. You should actually take things a bit a bit casual. I mean, like you can be safe and live a normal life too. I mean, you can actually stay home and do your routine that you used to do, in a different pattern, in a different way, but be a bit more safe. And I'm also trying to say for those who actually have contracted the virus itself, just don't be, reckless, because every guy that actually dies from this virus, it's upon your responsibility too. Because, I mean, like, it's something upon everybody's responsibility to take upon. I mean, it's everyone's responsibility, not just the government itself. We're not going to wait for the government to do it, to do the whole job, to impose a lockdown on us just to stay home and wear a mask, or to say that it's mandatory for us to stay in a working place wearing a mask. We should do this kind of stuff ourselves, because I mean, like. Yeah, I mean, some countries do make it hard for those kind of stuff to be available, such as hand sanitizers and masks. They're, some countries, kind of lacking on those kind of, necessities, and you can actually find alternatives for them. You can have N95, mask. You can find anything that would cover your oral your oral opening, your mouth, your nose, your eyes, and that's basically the stuff. If you can actually do what's possible for yourself to prevent the spread of this infection to others, and for those who are even close to you.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, I think this is true, like in all places, but especially in Yemen. Like you saw the social fabric change quite a lot because of COVID, right?
True is. I mean, the Yemen is known for guys who would come in and the generosity is like vast. When every Friday you can have guests at your home. You can started kissing with them on the cheeks. That's the kind of welcoming gestures that we do have here. Makes it easier for COVID to spread, and that in like days changed drastically into opposite. I mean, like, everyone kept their distance. I mean, even those who are at the countrysides or at the rural areas, I mean, I did not expect them to act the way they did. I mean, it was very amazing how they did actually cope with the whole situation in Yemen.
Yeah, I've been really impressed actually by from some of the stories I read in preparation for this podcast, were like stories of how the Yemeni people adapted. They changed.
Exactly.
It's a huge
moreover
thing.
There is one person that made me really think about how they really are doing well with everything. I mean, someone actually did his own marriage ceremony live stream. That was something new. I did not expect that from a Yemeni, to be honest. And
No.
I
did, man.
realize how.
I did. You guys strike me as somebody who'd be like, you know what? I'm tired of not being married to this woman. I don't care. This pandemic can take a back seat. I want to be married to you. We'll do this. Internet, come here. Yalla, yalla. Let's just get this show on the road.
Yeah, it does. It was really amazing. I mean, I really, if I would actually, if I could actually describe this in a better way, I wouldn't be able to. And this is a real great, like a huge applause to all the Yemenis that really, did well in this kind of crisis along these kind of days.
It's been really hard.
Yeah, it was very hard, and for them to actually work this thing out is something to say that we can actually work our war out too, and it really can say that we can actually take a step forward.
I mean, you guys deserve a lot of credit in my mind, a lot, because I have talked to people from all over the world, and I think the reason that I wanted to talk to you about Yemen especially is because we don't hear a lot of it on the news, literally it's just some conflict that was happening way over there, and something's going on with Saudi, something's going on with whatever, right? It's always seen through the lens of a geopolitical conflict, and I wanted to punch through that, break through it, and just actually, the friendship that's grown up between you and me, Ozzy, has given me a new understanding and a new perspective on Yemeni people and on Yemeni culture. And, the idea that it's just one thing just doesn't strike me as being realistic. And the fact is, your struggle was a real struggle, right? It's as real as anything that's gone on in, say, America or the United Kingdom. Real people faced the real fear of this stuff. Real people had to change, thousands of years of tradition and, their social impulses and hold themselves back. And it wasn't as easy as it was in other nations. As you say, you've had this civil conflict that's been going on for a while. You've had, problems with electricity. You've had not just one pandemic to deal with, but multiple epidemics as well, chickungunya, cholera, and others, and malaria, as you said, on top of COVID stuff. And you have, a culture where, some parts of the country are, I'm sure, extremely well developed, and some parts are just not. And then on top of that, you have all that fear, right? And that's something that, unless we talk about our COVID stories, people can't understand, and they can't acknowledge that. And when you understand what a people have been through, and what, for example, yourself as a doctor there, you were on the front line, right? And very much the front line in the same way as any doctor in New York or London or anywhere else. And not just that, but you were also a patient as well. The level of education, the way in which you're talking about it, the kind of perseverance and resilience really has come through in this. And it's astonishing.
I really appreciate that.
No, you don't need to. It's just the truth, man. And it's a complex thing. And I hope that...
No, I appreciate the pleasure.
Oh, thank you. But it's not the right thing to do, to be casual about other people's struggles and what they've overcome. I'm glad that you're saying that you're past the first wave, and I think from the sounds of it, the Yemeni people are very adaptable, and as you said, you were applauding them, and I think I would definitely agree with that. I wanted to ask you what you thought about the future, going forward, like for you, I think to begin with, and then maybe for the medical system in Yemen, and then if you wanted to, maybe just for Yemen as well. So for yourself.
To start, for me as a medical doctor, I think that I'm on the right place right now, and And I think I'm going through some, changes that would actually, be in my favor throughout the next year. And for the country itself, not very sure, but hopefully it would go to the best. And by saying that, in the future, I think Corona made like a really good cry for help for those who are in, in the ruling, level. I think that they would actually, this was the right, call for help for them. And I think this would actually make a difference from here on out, because as from 2 weeks before, there was a meeting on how they would actually make an epidemiology department in the University of Aden. That is like something that we were lacking for about, from since ever. We didn't have any such thing, and
That's wonderful.
that is like a start. That's like, that's like a new start for us, and hopefully it would get, much more, much more than that in the future. I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, I want to first of all thank you for taking the time to talk to me and
No problem, anytime.
to do this. I hope that you'll come back and talk to us again about other stuff, because I get the sense that you have just touched the surface of what you know and what your experiences are. But yeah, no. Do you have any final words or thoughts for our listeners just before we
I
sign
don't
off?
know. I just want to say, everyone, stay safe, stay home, and do the regular stuff that you would like on every single day that you do. Do the normal paradigm that you do actually every day, and stay happy.
Cool. And look, thank you again, Ozzy. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully I'll have a chance to catch up with you soon. Thank you very much, listeners. See you next time. Bye-bye.